Hello, this will be my first video on spells in D&D. I want to do a video for every single level of spell, starting with cantrips, going all the way up to 9th level spells, where I just basically list off the spells. The visuals of this video are going to be kind of boring because I'm mainly recording this for me to listen to while I'm at work, because I want to try to memorize every single one of these. But I I generated some AI art of every single one of the spells. I didn't put much work into it, so they probably don't look the best, but hopefully it'll be somewhat visually entertaining, and I'll link in the description the website that I used. But we're going to get things started with Acid Splash, 1 action, 60-foot range, where you select 2 targets, which must be within 5 feet of each other. They both get splishty splashed full of acid, 1d6 acid damage, with a verbal and semantic component requirement. When you reach 5th level, it'll go to 2d6, 11th is 3d6, and 17th is 4d6. Next we got Chill Touch. 1 action will set the sucker off for a 120-foot ranged necrotic-based attack. It'll create some sort of hand within a space, and you'll make a spell attack against that creature. If it hits, it takes 1d8 necrotic damage, and it can't regain hit points until the start of your next turn. So it ain't going to be regenerating or anything. This is very good against creatures that have passive regeneration abilities. And of course its damage goes up to 2d8 at 5th level, 3d8 at 11th level, and 4d8 at 17th level. Next we got Control Flames. This thing is a 1 action 60-foot range for a 5-foot cube effect with a semantic component. It will, you can choose one of the 4 effects and use one of them, which is instantaneously expand a flame 5 feet in one direction, provided that wood or other fuel is present in the new location. You can instantaneously extinguish flames within the cube, double or half the area of bright light and dim light caused by the flame, change its color or both. This change lasts 1 hour. You cause simple shapes, such as a vague form of a creature, an inanimate object, or location, to appear within the flames, and animate it as you like. This shape lasts for 1 hour. If you cast the spell multiple times, you can have up to 3 of its non-instantaneous effects active at a time, and you can dismiss such effects as an action. Create Bonfire, which is a constipation effect. It's a concentration effect, which will last for 1 minute. 60-foot range for a 5-foot cube. It's got a dex save. You can create a bonfire on the ground within range. Until the spell ends, the magic bonfire fills a 5-foot cube. Any creature within the bonfire space when you cast the spell must succeed a dexterity saving throw or take 1d8 fire damage. This is increased to 2d8 at 5th level, 3d8 at 11th level, and 17 at 17th level 48. It obviously does fire damage, and it requires verbal and semantic components. Next up, we got Dancing Lights, also concentration-based. It's got verbal, semantic, and material components, which it requires a bit of phosphorus, witchwood, or glowworm. I did not pronounce that correct. I don't care. You can concentrate on this, and it lasts about a minute. You can create up to 4 torch-sized lights within range, and you make them appear as torches. They can be whatever color you want, or you can make them all combined into a vaguely humanoid form of medium size. As a bonus action on your turn, you can move the lights up to 60 feet to a new spot within range. Also, the idea of this is that it creates light, if that wasn't clear. 120-foot range. Druidcraft, which is a verbal and semantic cantrip, 30-foot range, casting time 1 action, which you can choose one of these listed effects and have it happen, which is create a tiny harmless sensory effect that protects the weather, will be at your next location for 24 hours. This effect might manifest as a golden orb for clear skies, a cloud for rain, falling snowflake for snow, or so on. Basically, your DM decides what it seems like. Next, we got our other effects you can do is instantaneously make a flower blossom, a seed pod open, or a leaf bud bloom. You can create an instantaneous harmless sensory effect such as falling leaves, a puff of wind, the sound of a small animal, or faint odor of a skunk. The effect must fit inside a 5-foot cube. You instantaneously light or snuff out a candle or torch or a small campfire. This is prestidigitation for druids, and it sucks. That's kind of rude. It doesn't suck that bad. It's just not very good. Eldritch Blast is next, and it is the best cantrip. Everybody kind of agrees on that. It's got a 120-foot range, which is large, and it does force damage, which is one of the least resisted damage types in the game. A beam of crackling embers strikes towards your foes, 1d10 force damage, and d10s are also pretty nice. 2 beams at 5th level, 3 beams at 11th level, and 4 beams at 17th level. We have Firebolt, which is a action 120-foot ranged spell attack with verbal and semantic components required. You'll make a ranged spell attack against a target. On a hit, it'll take 1d10 fire damage, and any flammable objects hit by this spell ignite if it isn't being worn or carried. Once you reach 5th level, it'll increase to 2d10, 11th level will be 3d10, and 17th is 4d10. Is Frostbite, which is an action 60-foot ranged spell which requires verbal and semantic components. It'll cause numbing frost to form on one creature you can see within range. The target must make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 1d6 cold damage and has disadvantage on the next weapon attack roll it makes before the end of its next turn. It will increase to 2d6 by 5th level, 3d6 by 11th level, and 4d6 at 17th level. Guidance, which is a concentration verbal semantic touch spell where you touch a creature and before the spell ends the target can roll a d4 and add that number to an ability check of its choice. It can roll the die before or after making the ability check. The spell then ends. So you can only use it once, but you require having your concentration used to keep this up. I believe you could have 2 people both cast guidance on one person and have them roll 2d4s. I think that's a possibility. So this could definitely be used effectively for buffing people. Next up we got Gust, which is a 30-foot range verbal semantic cantrip where you seize the air and compel it to create one of the following effects. So it creates different effects depending on which one you choose. One medium or smaller creature that you choose must succeed a strength saving throw or be pushed up to 5 feet away from you. You can create a small blast of air capable of moving one object that is neither held nor carried that weighs no more than 5 pounds. The object is pushed up to 10 feet away from you. It isn't pushed with enough force to cause damage. Or you can create a harmless sensory effect using air, such as causing leaves to rustle, wind to slam, shutters to shut, or clothing to ripple in the breeze. Next up, we have Light, which everybody knows what Light does, but I'll just throw through it quick. Up to 1 hour. It's a touch-based spell, and it creates a 20-foot radius dim light for a different, 20-foot radius light and dim light for another 20 feet after that. The light can be colored if you like. Completely covering the object with something opaque blocks the light, and the spell ends if you cast it again or dismiss it as an action. If you target an object held or worn by a hostile creature, that creature must succeed a dexterity saving throw to avoid the spell. Also, it requires verbal and material components, the material being a firefly or phosphorescent moss. Phosphorescent, whatever that word is. Next up, we have Mage Hand, which takes an action to cast and can stay up for a minute. It has a 30-foot range, and it requires verbal and semantic components. Spectral floating hand appears at a point you choose within range. The hand lasts for duration or until you dismiss it as an action, and the hand vanishes if it's ever more than 30 feet away from you, or if you cast the spell again. You can use an action to control the hand, and you can use the hand to manipulate an object, open an unlocked door or container, stow or retrieve an item from an open container, or pour the contents out of a vial. You can move the hand up to 30 feet each time you use it. The hand cannot attack, activate magic items, or carry more than 10 pounds. Next up we got Magic Stone, which is a bonus action casting time, by the way, that's important. 1 minute touch-based spell, which requires verbal and semantic components. You touch 1 to 3 pebbles and imbue them with magic. You or someone else can make a ranged spell attack with one of the pebbles by throwing it or hurling it with a sling. If thrown, it has a range of 60 feet. If someone else attacks with the pebble, that attacker adds their spellcasting modifier, not the attacker's, to the attack roll. On a hit, the target takes bludgeoning damage equal to 1d6 plus your spellcasting modifier. Hit or miss, the spell ends on the stone. If you cast this spell again, the spell ends early on any pebbles still affected by it. Note, this spell does not increase damage with by leveling up. So this spell is as effective at level 1 as it is at level 17. Mending is a 1-minute casting time touch-based spell with a verbal, semantic, and material component, the material component being 2 lodestones, which repairs a single break or tear in an object you touch. You can physically repair magic items or construct, but the spell cannot restore magic to such an object. It's a very basic spell, let's be honest. Message is an action 120-foot ranged verbal, semantic, and material component spell, the material component being a short piece of copper wire. You'll point your finger toward a creature within range and whisper a message. The target, and only the target, hears the message and can reply in a whisper that only you can hear. You can cast the spell through solid objects if you are familiar with the target and know it is beyond the barrier. Magical silence, 1 foot of stone, 1 inch of common material, a thin sheet of lead, or 3 feet of wood blocks the spell. The spell does not have to follow a straight line and can travel freely around corners and through openings. Next up we have Minor Illusion, which is an action spell that will last for 1 minute. It has a 30-foot range and creates something within a 5-foot cube, requiring a semantic and material component, the material component being a bit of fleece, where you can create an object. You basically make something, and it's an illusionary thing. You can walk through it. It doesn't have any sound. You can create a sound. Its volume can range from a whisper to a scream. It can be beyond your voice, someone else's voice, a lion's roar, beating of drums, or any other sound you choose. The sound continues to unabated throughout the duration, or you can make a discrete sound at different times before the spell ends. If you create an image of an object such as a chair, muddy footprints, or a small chest, it must be no larger than a 5-foot cube. The image can't create sound, light, smell, or any other sensory effect. Physical interactions with the image reveals it to be an illusion because things can pass through it. If your creature uses its action to examine the sound or image, the creature can determine that the illusion he can figure out it's an illusion with a successful intelligence investigation check against your spell save DC. If the creature discerns the illusion for what it is, the illusion becomes faint to the creature. Next we have Mold Earth, which is a single action 30-foot range 5-foot cube area effect, which requires only semantic components. You choose a portion of dirt or stone that you can see within range that fits within a 5-foot cube. You manipulate it in one of the following ways. So it's another one of those that has multiple things you can do. You can target an area of loose earth and excavate it, move it along the ground, and deposit it up to 5 feet away. This movement doesn't have enough force to cause damage. You can cause shapes, colors, or both to appear in the dirt or stone, spelling out words, creating images, or shaping patterns. The change lasts for 1 hour. If the dirt or stone you target is on the ground, you can cause it to become difficult terrain. Alternatively, you can cause the ground to become normal terrain if it's already difficult terrain. This change lasts for 1 hour. If you cast the spell multiple times, you have no more than 2 of its non-instantaneous effects active at a time. You can dismiss such an effect with an action. Next we have Poison Spray, a single action 10-foot range poison-based effect with verbal and semantic components, which requires your target within range to save on a Constitution saving throw with your spell save DC. Or you'll take 1d12 poison they'll take 1d12 damage, which increases to 2d12 at 5th level, 3d12 at 11th level, and 4d12 at 17th level. Up next, we've got the granddaddy of all the create different effects ability, which is Prestidigitation. It's got a 10-foot range, action for cast time, components are verbal and semantic, and you can create an instantaneous harmless sensory effect, instantaneous light or snuff out a candle, instantaneously clean or soil an object no larger than 1 cubic foot, chill or warm or flavor some food, make a color or small mark on a symbol appear with an object within a surface that lasts an hour, or you can create a non-magical trinket or an illusory image that can fit in your hand that lasts until the end of your turn. Next turn, not this turn, the end of your next turn. If you cast a spell multiple times, you can have 3 of its non-instantaneous effects active at a time, and you can dismiss such an effect as an action. Up next, we got Produce Flames, which is a single action fire-based ability with verbal and semantic components, where a flickering flame appears in your hand. The flame remains there for duration and harms neither you nor your equipment. The flame sheds bright light for a 10-foot radius and dim light for an additional 10 feet. The spell ends if you dismiss it as an action or cast it again. You can also attack with this flame, although doing so ends the spell. You cast the spell, or as an action on a later turn, you can hurl the flame at a creature within 30 feet of you. Make a ranged spell attack on a hit. Target takes 1d8 fire damage. Increase to 2d8 at 5th, 3d8 at 11th, and 4d8 at 17th. Next up, we've got Ray of Frost, which is a action 60-foot ranged cold attack, which has verbal and semantic components, where you blast a beam of cold damage at a creature, and on a spell attack against that creature on a hit, it will deal 1d8 cold damage, 2d8 at 5th, 3d8 at 11th, 4d8 at 17th, as all good cantrips have. Resistance. Resistance is a 1 action cast for a minute with concentration buff spell, which requires verbal, semantic, and material components, the material component being a miniature cloak, which is an odd item to have, but I guess some people, maybe they're like fairy cloaks. You touch a willing creature before the spell ends, that target can roll a d4 and add that number rolled to one of the saving throws. So it's like guidance, but for saving throws, which makes it really annoying to use, I would say. This should be a reaction spell, I would say. Moving on. Sacred Flames, a action 60-foot range, verbal and semantic radiant damage dealing cantrip, which requires a target within range to succeed on a dexterity saving throw or take 1d8 radiant damage. The target gains no benefits from cover for the saving throw. Increases by 1d8 when you reach 5th level to 2d8. 11th level is 3d8, and 17th level is 4d8. Up next we have Shape Water, much like Mold Earth, except for water. I think Gust is also kind of in the same area where they're all kind of just elemental-based moldings of the area, where 1 action, 30-foot range, 5-foot cube, semantic components. You'll choose an area of water within range that fits within a 5-foot cube and manipulate it in one of the following ways. Instantaneously move or otherwise change the flow of the water as you direct up to 5 foot in any direction. If this movement doesn't have enough force to cause damage, you cause a water to form into simple shapes and animate at your direction. This change lasts for 1 hour. You can change the water's color or opacity. The water must be changed in the same way throughout. The change lasts for 1 hour. You freeze the water provided that there are no creatures within it, and the water unfreezes in 1 hour. If you cast the spell multiple times, you can have no more than 2 of its non-instantaneous effects active at one time. You can dismiss such as an action. Now we're on to Shillelagh. Shillelagh. However you want to say this thing. The wood of a club quarterstaff you're holding is imbued with nature's power, because it's a bonus action touch-based effect, requiring verbal, semantic, and material components, the material components being a mistletoe, a shamrock leaf, a club, or quarterstaff. And for the duration, you'll use your spellcasting ability instead of strength for the attack. Shocking Grasp, a action touch-based spell dealing lightning damage with verbal and semantic components required, where you'll shock a creature that you touch. Make a melee spell attack against the creature if it hits, It'll take 1d8 lightning damage, and it can't take reactions until its next turn. Of course, it's 2d8 at 5th level, 3d8 at 11th level, and 4d8 at 17th level. Next, we got Spare the Dying, which is a action touch-based cantrip with a verbal and semantic components. You touch a living creature that has 0 hit points. The creature becomes stabilized. The spell has no effect on the undead or constructs. So this saves your friend from dying completely. If they are, if you don't want to try to make a medicine check to keep them up or heal them, you can do this to keep them from actually dying. Next up, we have Thaumaturgy, which is Prestidigitation's cousin, you'd call it. Effect that lasts 1 minute with a 30-foot range, requiring only verbal components. You can create one of the minor, you manifest a minor wonder or sign of supernatural power within range. Your voice booms up to 3 times as loud as normal for 1 minute. You can cause flames to flicker, brighten, dim, or change color for 1 minute. You can cause harmless tremors in the ground for 1 minute. You can create an instantaneous sound that originates from a point of your choice within range, such as rumbles of thunder, a cry of a raven, or ominous whispers. You instantaneously cause an unblocked door or window to fly open or slam shut. You alter the appearance of your eyes for 1 minute. I don't know why you would ever want to alter the appearance of your eyes, but I guess you can do that. And you can only have up to 3 of these effects active at a time. Dismissible as an action as usual. Next up, we have Thunderclap, which is a 1-action, 5-foot range, thunder-based spell requiring only semantic components, which you create a burst of thunderous sound that can be heard up to 100 feet away. Each creature within range, other than you, must succeed a Constitution saving throw or take 1d6 thunder damage, increasing to 2d6 at 5th level, 3d6 at 11th level, and 4d6 at 17th level. And next up, we've got the best cantrip in the game, True Strike, a concentration-based spell that requires your whole action, has a range of 30 feet, and allows you to gain advantage on 1 attack roll. It's terrible. Don't use the spell. Next up, we have Vicious Mockery. You unleash a string of insults within 60 feet, requiring only your verbal components. And if you can, you'll have your target that you're targeting do a wisdom saving throw, or they'll take 1d4 psychic damage and has disadvantage on the next attack roll it makes before the end of its turn. So that's 2d4 at 5th level, 3d4 at 11th level, and 17th level it'll be 4d4. Not high damage, but that disadvantage is not a bad effect at the same time. And 60 feet ain't a bad range either. Next up, we have Word of Radiance, which is a casting time of 1 action and a range of 5 feet. A verbal and material components, which the material component being a holy symbol. You utter a divine word and a burning radiance erupts from you. Each creature of your choice that you can see within range must succeed a Constitution saving throw or take 1d6 radiant damage. Spell's damage increases to 2d6 at 5th, 3d6 at 11th, and 4d6 at 17th. Notably, you can choose creatures within range. So if you're right next to a bunch of your friends, you don't need to damage them with this. So that's kind of nice. Next up, we have Toll the Dead, which is a action 60-foot range, verbal and semantic component requiring cantrip, where you can choose a creature within range that you have to see within range, and the target will take a wisdom saving throw, and on a fail will take 1d8 necrotic damage. And if the target's missing any of its hit points, it actually takes 1d12 necrotic damage. And of course, it's 2d8 or 12 at 5th, 3d8 or 12 at 11th, and 17th causes 4d8 or 4d12. Obviously with the same requirement of the 8 or 12 being hit point loss. Thorn Whip, a action 30-foot ranged verbal, semantic, and material component being spell or with a stem of a plant with thorns, where you'll create a vine-like whip covered in thorns that lashes out for a melee spell attack. Notably, it's a 30-foot range, but it is a melee spell attack, which deals 1d6 piercing damage if it hits, and you'll pull the creature 10 feet closer to you. 2d6 at 5th level, 3d6 at 11th level, and 4d6. Next, we have Sword Burst, You create a momentary circle of spectral blades that sweep around you. One action. Range is self, and it requires only verbal components. And all creatures within 5 feet of you must succeed a dexterity saving throw or take 1d6 force damage. Notably, you don't get to pick which creatures take this damage, so don't do this next to your friends. It will, of course, increase to 2d6 at 5th, 3d6 at 11th, and 4d6 at 17th levels. Next, we have Sapping Sting, which is an action, range of 30 feet, verbal semantic components that will sap the vitality of one creature you see within range. Target must succeed a Constitution saving throw or take 1d4 necrotic damage and fall prone. 2d4 at 5th level, 3d4 at 11th level, and 17th level causes 4d4. We've got Primal Savagery, which I'm pretty sure is a terrible spell, which with a range of self, components only needing semantic, casting time 1 action, you channel primal magic and cause your teeth or fingernails to sharpen. And then you can make a melee spell attack against one creature within 5 feet of you. On a hit, the target takes 1d10 acid damage. After you make the attack, your teeth and fingernails return to normal. So you can't even use this when you're transformed as a druid. And the spell is only active for druids, or available to druids. So unless you're going to be a bard and use your magical secrets to get this, just transform into a beast that can do more than 1d10 damage anyway. Although I guess it does increase to 2d10 at 5th, 3d10 at 11th, and 4d10 at 17th level. But I would recommend not using this spell. Mind Sliver, with a 1 action casting time and a 60-foot range, components being verbal. You'll create a spike of psychic energy on a creature that you can see within range. The target must succeed on an intelligence saving throw or take 1d6 psychic damage and subtract 1d4 from the next saving throw it makes before the end of your next turn. And of course this damage increases to 2d6 at 5th level, 3d6 at 11th, and 4d6 at 17th. This is actually quite a nice spell if you're trying to make a stronger boss monster, be affected by a strong spell. So you can cause them to, reduce. If you add Bane to that too, I believe it would be reduced by 2d4 instead of just 1d4. Notably, the d4 does not get higher when you are more leveled up. It stays the same. Lightning Lure, which is an action, range of self within 15-foot radius, verbal spell, which creates a lash of lightning energy that strikes at one creature of your choice that you can see within 15 feet of you. And that target must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pulled up to 10 feet in a straight line towards you and take 1d8 lightning damage. But it only takes that lightning damage if it's within 5 feet of you. So this spell's damage increases to 2d8 at 5th, 3d8 at 11th, and 4d8 at 17th. Infestation is a 30-foot range action, verbal, semantic, and material, the material being a living flea spell, which causes a cloud of mites, fleas, or other parasites to appear momentarily on one creature you can see within range. That target must succeed a Constitution saving throw or take 1d6 poison damage and move 5 feet in a random direction. If it can move at its speed is at least 5 feet. Roll a d4 to determine the direction. 1 north, 2 south, 3 east, 4 west. The movement does not provoke opportunity attacks, and if the direction rolled is blocked, the target doesn't move. Of course, the damage will increase to 2d6 at 5th, 3d6 at 11th, and 4d6 at 17th. Next up, we have Green Flame Blade, with a casting time of 1 action and 5-foot radius from yourself for a semantic and material, the material component being a melee weapon worth at least 1 silver piece. You brandish the weapon used in your spell. You basically turn your sword or whatever you're using as your weapon into a stronger version of itself. You'll make a melee spell attack with the weapon against one creature within 5 feet of you. On a hit, the target suffers the weapon's attack's normal effects, and you can also cause green flames to leap from the target to a different creature of your choice that you can see within 5 feet of it. The second creature takes fire damage equal to your spellcasting modifier. At 5th level, the melee attack deals an extra 1d8 fire damage to the target on a hit, and the fire damage to the second creature is increased to 1d8 plus your spellcasting modifier. Both damage rolls increase by 1d8 and 11th, so 2d8 and 2d8, and 17th is 3d8 and 3d8. Next up, we have Friends, another terrible cantrip, where you cast the spell on yourself with semantic and materials components, the material component being a small amount of makeup applied to the face as the spell is cast, and it requires your concentration up to 1 minute. For the duration, you have advantage on all charisma checks directed at one creature of your choice that isn't hostile towards you. When the spell ends, the creature realizes that you used magic to influence its mood and becomes hostile towards you. A creature prone to violence might attack you. Next up, we have Encode Thoughts, where you can cast this on yourself with an action using semantic components, and it lasts 8 hours. You'll pull a memory, an idea, or a message from your mind and transfer it into a tangible string of glowing energy called a thought strand, which persists for the duration or until you cast the spell again. This thought strand appears in an unoccupied space within 5 feet of you as a tiny, weightless, semi-solid object that can be held and carried like a ribbon. It is otherwise stationary. Casting the spell while holding a thought strand allows you to instantaneously receive whatever memory, idea, or message the thought strand contains. I don't know how you'd use this. I'm going to be honest. I think this might be a DM spell, so that they can, input some sort of, plot device. Next up, we have Booming Blade, which is a self-range action spell requiring semantic and material components, the material component being a melee weapon worth at least 1 silver, where you brandish the weapon used in the spell's casting and make a melee attack against one creature within 5 feet of you. On a hit, the target suffers the weapon's normal effects and then becomes sheathed in booming energy until the start of your next turn. If the target willingly moves 5 feet or more before then, the target takes 1d8 thunder damage and the spell ends. At 5th level, the melee deals an extra 1d8 thunder damage to the target on a hit, and the damage the target takes for moving increases to 2d8, and then 2d8 and 3d8 for 11th, and then 3d8 and 4d8 for 17th. Blade Ward. This is a range of self requiring an action and verbal and semantic component spell, where you extend your hand and trace a sigil of warding in the air. Until the end of your next turn, you have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage dealt by weapon attacks. This is too slow to be useful. You would need to either cast this every single turn using your action to predict when somebody was going to come up to attack you as a, wizard, sorcerer, or bard, because you're not going to cast this as a fighter, because you're going to use your action to attack. But, I don't know, this has to be a reaction if you want to use it properly. And that's the whole list of cantrips. Like I said, I'll be doing first, second, third, all the spells eventually. I'm also going to combine them all into one big video at the end of all that. But for now, that's all I got. So, have a nice day. Bye.